Baruchim Aboim B'Shem Hashem. B'Shem Egen Shir Torah Moses Boston. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's shir from Rabbi Yaakov ben Shlita. I'd like to give a big character by Josh Melman and family for the support of tonight's shir in honor of Rabbi Bender. I have the great zchus of sponsoring a shir or of joining in the Egen Shir Torah's annual dinner this upcoming Monday, August 18th on Yitzhak Avenue K. Please call 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. Tonight we have the cover to have with us once again Rabbi Yaakov ben Shlita, Yeshiva Darchei Torah, speak on Midos Tovos. That's what counts. My cover to call Rabbi Bender for tonight's Rosh.
Thank you very much. Okay, ask a question when we start. Oh. What's a bully, Rabbi said? What's a bully? Who wants to define a bully? Today when parents call Yeshiva, Morty, help me out. No? They call, my kid's being bullied. What's a bully? Huh? Bossy, good. Huh? Okay, yeah. What's a bully? Huh? Not happy. A bully is someone using his power that he has over somebody younger, let's say. Why am I talking about you here? Why I'm murdering myself for a minute. Murdering myself. Huh? Okay, could be closer. In Parshas Chukas, the Haftarah is about Yiftach. Yiftach was one of the leaders, the Siyim in Klal Yisrael. Yiftach was, I want to read the Haftarah, okay, if you don't mind, all right? Read the Haftarah. I'll tell you what it means, a bully, okay? Because we have to teach, Rabbi say, it's shver matzav a little bit now with the anti-Semitism in the country, no? A little bit of a hard situation. And I think it's very, very important to start thinking a little bit about, we got to take care of each other a little bit. The Midas, everybody spoke about it, of course, in Shlita in the 9 days, and Tisha B'Av, of course, but I want to go into more detail, but it concerns us. Of course, in the Parshas Chukas is about the Melchama Amin and Moav. This is Midos Tovos. V'Yiftach HaGiladi HaYakibar Chal. Yiftach HaGiladi, Yiftach who came from Gilad. Gilad was named for someone, very, very prominent person. He was a Gibar Chayil, a very, very strong person. Who ben Isha Zaina. Gilad lived with Isha Zaina, and they had the child called Yiftach. Vayelad Gilad as Yiftach. Gilad gave birth through the Isha Zaina to Yiftach. Vayelad Isha Gilad Leibanim. The Isha Gilad, regular Isha Gilad, had sons with Gilad. Okay, Vayiglu b'nei Isha, and the children of this regular wife of Gilad, they had children, and they grew older. Vayigarshu es Yiftach, they chased him out of the house. Vayamru Loi, they said to him, Leisinchal b'veis avinu, you cannot have any Yerusha in the house of our father. It's incorrect. Even if it's Ben Isha Zaina, it's his son Gilad, he has a right to Yerusha. Out. Yeshiva Eretz, so what happened was, Ki Ben Isha Cheresat, you are the son, because he wasn't even Isha Zaina. You are the child of another lady. Out of here. Yiftach was so embarrassed that he doesn't say they chased him out. They gave him a hard time. He ran away because of the tsar and the agony that the brothers were giving him. Interesting. He sat Eretz Tov, whatever that means, a good land. Yiftach, who gathered around him. He was a powerful guy. Gibar Chayil, who gathered around him. Anashim raked him, light the convention, empty people. By when they went out with him, the corner of the by the streets, by a candy store, whatever, they're sitting around, gas stations, they hang out. Some years went by, and Bnei Ammon had a Melchama with Klal Yisrael, and they saw Klal Yisrael, they were in trouble. The elders of Gilad, so Gilad was a person, Gilad was married to this lady and the Isha Zaina, but it's called Gilad. Ziknei Gilad, the elders of Gilad went. They wanted Yiftach was living a nice, comfortable life. All his chevra, they hung out with him, and they went to get him. They said to Yiftach, go, become our general. We need you. We're in trouble with the nation of Ammon. Become our general. So what happened? And we'll go fight with Ammon. What? You hated me. Now you're coming to me? At the Groshuni, he chased me out in the house of my father. Madua Basim Alayim, now you're coming to me? Why? That's why we're coming back to you. Help us out. You'll be the leader. We'll follow you. And then comes the whole story. Yiftach, unfortunately, unhappy ending at the end of Torah, because he made a neder. Whoever comes out of my house, I'm not going into that famous Gemara. Either he brought it for carbon or didn't. Yiftach was bullied by his brothers. I go to a wedding in Eretz Yisrael. I was doing a wonderful thing. I went for a day and a half to Eretz Yisrael right before Shivas B'Tammuz. A Talmud that I had that I was very close to really didn't have a home. We'll call it that. That's all. Very close to him. He learns by Reb Usher and Etzrol Lemir, and he's a muvik, and I went for the chasana. I went. I sit down by the table. I'm a big macha today, no? Uncle Ben, I'm a big macha, no? And I got shook up. You know why? I sit down by the table, and there's a guy sitting there. My table I'm going to sit on. There's no seating over there. Baruch Hashem, in America today, seating is out the window also. Yeah, 3 tables over. You sit, it's wonderful. And I sit down, I get guy sitting next to me, I'm going to call him, he has a very unique name, I'm not going to say his name, I'll call him Yossi Goldstein. I sit down, I said, Shalom Aleichem, my name is Yaakov Bender. I'm ready looking at him. He says, I'm Yossi Goldstein. I gave a shudder, a shake. 60 years ago, this miserable person bullied me in Torah B'das. I was a 10-year-old kid, whatever. He bullied me in Torah B'das. My mama started shaking for 10, 20 seconds. Married, with children, married children, grandchildren behind her. And Yana Mamza, pardon me, started up me the whole year, not with me only, the whole yeshiva is bothering me that he's sitting there. Yeah. I thought back to that. I forgot about him years ago. The grief and the aggravation. He was a bully. He was the tallest kid in the class, 8th grade. We were all growing, not growing, yeah, growing, whatever. I was a shrimpy. And I saw him and I wanted to slap him. It took me a minute, that's all, to calm down. Baruch Hashem, you can't bother other people. You don't know the tsar we give to other people, chas v'sholom. We get tsar to mention. And then you don't forget it, Varaya Yankel Bender. I go to a chassan at Yisrael, I was in a high. I went to a Talmud chassan that had to be on top with a lot. He's a suyin today. I felt so good, and for 5 minutes, this guy bothered me, what he did to me. You gotta be kidding, come on. I went through enough in life since then. I lost a father suddenly, right? Later on, so what? It doesn't go away. The wounds of old when you're a kid, they bother us very, very much. Gotta be very careful, Rabbi say. Yiftach didn't let it down. Yiftach is coming, they're coming him to be the Yeshua of that Torah. The Yehu, when he's going to be the leader of the Torah. You guys started up with me. I don't have anything to do with you. You started up with me. And that could be a real, real problem. How careful one has to be when starting up with someone that's in shul also, Rabbi say. I'm telling you stories tonight that bother me. I'm Molby Cheppa. We don't even think. We don't think for a second when we Cheppa somebody about it'll hurt. But if I guess that bissel, not nice. Pasha, not nice. When I was a kid, sat down for the yom with my father. I hung out the two shtiblich, let's call it the two shuls, shtiblich, okay, that had like a lot of minyanim after the other, whatever you call those minyanim, a huge amount of minyanim, Shabbat Shabbos and Barapak. So one of the 2 shuls around my neighborhood, I davened in Sigit. I was very good friends, Rabbi Aaron, Zalman Leib, they lived in my block. I knew them both very well before we all got big. I knew them all, they're mamish my age. I hung out in Kleisenberg. Also, Kleisenberg is Stiebel over there, very chassid v'shotel. Kleisenberg Rebbe is a Chusiya Galeno, Tzad V'Karshel Bracha, was still living there. I think he moved in 1957. I was a little boy. But the 2 sons I used to play with, one is in Union City, I think, and one is in Israel today. And they were also a minion factory, minyanim. I needed I used to go there. This is already riddled after. In 1967, there was a war, 6-day war. The whole America, the whole world, what happened was that for 3 weeks was touch and go. We have pachad mamish what's coming to Israel, because Egypt and Syria and Jordan were all ganging up together, and Egypt commanded the United Nations to get out of the Sinai Desert. And I remember Abi Ibn, I think was the foreign minister then, he gave a drasha that the United Nations is like an umbrella that you close when it starts raining. Because when they needed it in the wartime, they chased everybody out. I'm telling you, the Tillim then was Meridik, and it was really shver sight. And the Kleisenberg Rebbe sent his wife and 6 kids to America. He was afraid. Many people came. Rabbi Baruch Finkel, I remember, sent his kids. But Kleisenberg Rebbe was the greatest man, the man that spent 2 years in the DP camps. The stories about him, what he didn't do to Mechazik, and he married off people, he made shidduchim for them. And Bahema gets up in the shul over there, and I was 15 years old. And he gets up in the shul, and where I took the chutzpah till today, and he says, "Das ist a Rebbe! Schickt seine Kinder in seinem Wab to America, das ist a Rebbe!" He's fearing it, Kiryat Sanz over there, and Natanya, everything. He sends his kids back to America, das ist a Rebbe. I got so upset. What am I doing? Yes, somebody, I stood up and I said to him, "Entschuldigung, I made Chassidish Yiddish," and I said to him, "Die ist verloren an Wab mit 11 Kinder, die. Did you lose a wife and 11 children? Did you lose?" I should have said something like that. It's like a klal almost. The Klezmer Rebbe lost a wife and 11 children by the Nazis, Yimach Shemam. You know what that means? None of us know what that means. How can we know what it means? A wife and 11 children. And this Menuvel gets up and says, "This is a Rebbe." He lost a wife and 11 kids. He spent 2 years in DP camps giving chizuk despite all that. And he has, Baruch Hashem, a second wife. I met him, I want you to know this, when I went mamish, it's every year to meet the Talmidim about 6 or 7 months ago. I met him at a place, I gave him Shalom Aleichem. I couldn't get too close to him, but he saw me from far, he called me over. He had around him 1,000 people, but they made for me what do you call that? They opened up over there like Kriyas Yamsuf, and I gave him Shalom Aleichem, and I told him the story. I said, "Your father, you know how he was hurting the Klezmer Rebbe, and he covered up his hurting." And the guy gets up and chappers and barabim. You can't measure the Gehenim for such people. I'm not wishing on anybody Gehenim. I'm not wishing on anybody Chas v'Shalom Gehenim. But a mensch goes like chayzik from a Rebbe nachaychit. He makes fun of a Rebbe. That's what we do. That's our conduct. When we see something like that, or we try to be nice to people, or we try to be fine to people, edelkeit to people. I met a bacher not long ago from another yeshiva, not our yeshiva, of course, and he says to me, it's like almost not a mitzvah not to talk about Midos, he says to me. Midos? Did you ever learn Nefesh HaChaim? He says to me that it says there in the Shah Dalit what it means, Torah. You talk about Midos all the time. I talk about Torah also. I got to learn. I have a storm. I give a Shia Klali in Yeshiva. I give a Shia every Tuesday to the Bachim. But you talk about Midos all the time. I said, if you ever open up at the Hakdam of the Shah, the Nefesh HaChaim, I said to him, did you ever open up the Hakdam of the HaChaim where he says, Kol Oilam, Nevnivra El Elohayel, Lachrini. The ganze Welt ist weggestellt only to help other people. And you're chapping me. Let's go. I didn't care. He was a guy never needed help, probably. I didn't care. That didn't bother me at all. But what about us? What about us? We got to be careful. We mechanech our children. Rabbi say, if you give me, there's too much chutzpah out there. There's too much bittul out there. Young people come back sometimes from Eretz Yisrael with a lot of bittul. I'm not a negative type of guy. I'm really not. I'm trying to be positive. They come back with bittul, this yeshiva, that Rosh Yeshiva. One bacher says to me again, you're Rosh Yeshiva? Ooh, what does he know that Rosh Yeshiva? A lot more than you know for sure, is what I wanted to tell him. I said, you talk like that? Please go away, don't talk to me. We have to raise our children to the, we're living in the Tkufas of Mashiach. I'm not saying that Mashiach is coming. We've had too many disappointments with that over the years, that Mashiach is coming. But we're living in the Tkufa now. Those people who are survivors, there are very few that remember what went on. So that my mother lost a full family. So we children survivors remember what went on. We really don't remember. Our parents shouldn't nice to us. Our parents didn't like to talk to us about the Holocaust. Your parents talked about the Holocaust? I don't think so. They wanted us to have a good life, to be raised normally and healthy. They wanted us to go to college. Whatever they wanted us to do, they wanted us to become. By mention and so on and so forth, but they didn't talk about when we heard a little bit later on in life, these are not so pasha today. What's going on out there in the world? One major insurance policy, everybody say, if we're not going to be nice to each other, let's learn from Agdali Yisrael. I want to tell you a little bit about Shlomo Hyman. This Yartzeit was recently. Shlomo Hyman was Yeshiva of Tarvidas. Yeshiva of Tarvidas. He came in 1934. He was a yeshiva called Ramaylis in the city of Vilna. His super person over him was Reb Chaim Oizer, the great Reb Chaim Oizer. Reb Chaim Oizer didn't, had only one child. Everybody say only one single child. I'm going off on a tangent. I'm in trouble, but I got to tell you about it. Reb Chaim Oizer had one single child, a daughter. You want to hear what it means caring about other people? But I told you about Reb Chaim Eizes. My mother was very new. She stayed in my parents' house. My parents lived in a city called Latvatsk. My mother, rather, I'm sorry. Latvatsk was a suburb of Varsha, and it was a city that was considered good for people who had TB. And Reb Chaim Eizes had other illnesses. He'd come to the house. So I tell you, if I know Clar, it's firsthand. Reb Chaim Eizes had one single daughter. One single daughter. That's all he had. When she was 16 years old, she was handling in a shidduch with one of Gedolei Yisrael. Chaim Eizes was ready for shidduch, and then she got sick. She was sick for 2 years. That's what we have to tell our children about, what it means to be nice. I'm giving you examples of people. He had one single daughter. And for 2 years, they went through the world trying to find a refuah for Chaim Eizes' daughter. It didn't go. On the last day of her life, the doctor used to come to the house every single day, the doctor. He came to the house every single day. If Chaim Eizes al tznius, when he came to examine her, he'd walk out of the room. So he walked out of the room and waited by the door. And the doctor came out and he says to Reb Chaim Eizes these words. It's like, forget about it, she's a geseses. Means the last breaths she's having, mamish, a few hours, 3, 4 hours, 5 hours. Even the shalai, if you're allowed to touch, the geseses, whatever. Reb Chaim Eizes said, that means she understands nothing. What's going on? He asked her a few times, the doctor, it means he understands nothing? The doctor said nothing. Got to be careful. Rabbi said today, I want to tell you something. Tangent of a tangent of a tangent. You got to be very careful. My mother-in-law, Shalom, was very sick for 3 months. She was in a comatose state from before Pesach till Yud Beis Iyah. And I never took my son. Oh, it's interesting. My son, Chaim Eizes, should be gesund and stark. I have a son named Reb Chaim Eizes. He was about 4 or 5 years old, very young. I used to go to my mother I had my mother the shift. You can't leave a healthy person or a sick person in the hospital by themselves. You can't. So my mother's Maimonides. We used to take turns. I used to take the night shift from 10 o'clock at night till 6 in the morning. But I also had another cloud. Whenever I was in the area of Borough Park, I went in to see my mother. So we baked matzahs by the Polish Matzah Bakery on 36th Street. When I finished baking, got to go see my mother. But I never let Chaim Eizes go. I didn't want to see. When someone is nifta, immediate family, chas v'shalom, a father and a mother, later on we remember the good days. But a little kid who only sees my mother with tubes and pipes and zachar, I didn't want to take him. This is just a reminder, not part of the speech. So, but I'm going, Matzah Bakery, Chaim Eizes is with me. So I went with him. We come into the room, pipes, taka, and then I said, Mommy, they told us to talk to her. She was in a deep coma. She hadn't reacted for weeks and weeks. I want to tell you what she did react to later in the speech. Didn't react. And then I said, Mommy, Chaim Eizes is there. So what happened? The doctor said nothing. And she went, I will never forget that. For doctors that say, I brought it up now because I'm just telling you about Chaim Eizes and the doctor of his daughter. I went right back into the comatose state. If I meet it's a memory, I get the chills still today. My mother's not here almost 30 years. So Chaim Eizes, the doctor said, you know what Chaim Eizes did, Rabbi say? He went into a study, he had a room where he sat and he learned. And he answered shuvas for the whole world. And they were piling up because he was busy with his daughter. His daughter was sick. He went into a side room. The office, we used to have 3 secretaries. My mother saw her own eyes. He had 3 male Talmidei Chacham secretaries. They would open up the letters to him. And one would read the letter and he'd say, go over to Shulchan Aruch Yeridea. The next one would open up a letter, he'd say, go Shulchan Aruch Chesed Mishpat. And the next one opened the letter, he'd say, go look at it for the end in Even Ezer. And he went back and forth to answer 3 chuvas at once. And he signed all 3 chuvas, he looked them over. That's his room. He went in there and he started writing feverishly. He started writing. They went into Rebbe. The doctor said, maybe a few hours. Why don't you? He says, you don't understand. The doctor said she doesn't know him. Yeah. There are people waiting. He showed the piles of shalos chuvas. To answer shalos chuvah, you have to have svarim. Got to learn. He's becoming an einon. That's what he said to the people. He's becoming an einon. Rahman al-Islam. It means he can't learn Torah for 7 days. I got it right. He wrote for 4 hours straight. They told him, Rebbe, it's over. But it means caring about other people. Reb Chaim Eizes, ein an einziger Kind, one single child, is holding on being nifter. One single child. He stellt sich vor, was tut der Rebbe say? That's Reb Chaim Eizes. Reb Shlomo Hyman was a Talmud sort of Reb Chaim Eizes. Reb Chaim Eizes told him to go to America. Reb Shlomo Leilenu. If I'm offending anybody here, please be mindful. He didn't have any children. My parents were super close to him because my parents also didn't have kids for 5 years. So the years that my parents escaped September 1, 1939. They were married a short while before that. They escaped to America September 1939, which is, those of you who know, that was the day the Nazis attacked Poland, and they got out. So I can stand there for a half hour, tell you, not a half hour, for an hour, how they got out. And they got out. They came to America. My parents arrived there Erev Yom Kippur of 1939, which is really tough shin already, beginning 1940, whatever, the English Hebrew calendar. And then my father became, at first he took a job in Yisrael in Baltimore, and then because my mother was the first Pesach teacher in America, so one of them had to change. My father came back. Shlomo Hyman told my father, there was a question. They were just married, and my father was going away on Sunday, coming back on Thursday. He said, my mother's job is more important. She's building the future generations of girls. They're going to build the houses of Klal Yisrael. You, Reb David, was the highest job under Avrudaman in Yisrael in Baltimore. He gave up the job, he came to Tervadas, and became like this with Reb Shlomo Hyman. They learned B'chavrusa, preparing Shia together. My mother was best friends with Rebbe Tzlaim, he was nifta, 57 years old, very, very young. She later on married Rav Unterman, the Rav Rosh in Yisrael, after Shlomo was nifta. And my mother would tell me also it means Midos. What it means Reb Shlomo Hyman. The Rosh Yeshiva of Tervadas, what it means Midos. Shlomo Hyman never ever told his wife, ever, make me a glass of tea. He would say to his wife, her name was Fega. So my mother told me, Fega, maybe you want a glass of tea. So she got the message. Shlomo Hyman, if she ever was home late, he would prepare the table, prepare everything for her. If Shlomo Hyman was sitting once, and I'm sorry, he was falling. The guy that he was, that shach the guy. He had to do with the story I heard from someone who was in the room. Just before he was nifter, he said, bring tzvei, in the middle of a coma, bring tzvei banklach, bring 2 chairs. Rabbi Akiva Eger is here, and Rabbi Chaim Eiser is here. Hallucinating, imagine that these 2 people are here. That's where Shlomo Hyman was. He spoke to people. My mother told me that she finally got pregnant after 5 years of marriage. My older sister, Allah Shalom, and they were going through a door together, my father, my mother, Reb Shlomo and his Rebbetzin. Reb Shlomo said, my mother, Rebbetzin Bender, you go through the door first. Pregnant lady, my mother said, you're going for the Yeshiva? I'm not going for the Yeshiva. So Reb Shlomo made a joke to her. He said, what I am, we know already, he said. What you're carrying, come on, it could be, who knows what you're carrying? I used to make jokes to my sister. I said, if Reb Shlomo would have known what mommy's carrying, he would have ran through the door first. Don't worry about it. Well, Lamaisa, Shlomo's Midas. So the Bachrim used to come to Shlomo's house every Friday night. They used to sit by the Rebbe. And when he was nifta, she was alone, no children. So I had this Reb Shia Wilhelm from the old Wilhelm Hershkowitz families. He was one of the Bachrim. And they used to go Friday night to her to keep her company because Reb Shlomo was nifta. And you know that Reb Shlomo in those days they didn't know man, woman, whose fault, what. He assumed the woman can't have kids. That's what they assumed in those days. Today it's a whole new ball game. But in those days, he says Reb Shlomo, in 26 years of marriage, she went to a doctor, but never ever mentioned to her that we don't have kids. Because maybe it'll hurt her. Shlomo Hyman. He's giving a shir in Tervadas. This I heard from him, remember who was in the shir. He's giving a shir. You know what Shalom Bayis is? The greatest lesson in Shalom. I give a vad in Yeshiva school in Shalom Bayis. Whatever I say over, nothing compared to what Shlomo Hyman did that day. He was a Rosh Yeshiva Tervadas, which was Bedford Avenue, corner of Taylor Street. The Vina, I think, took it over now. Right diagonally across the Satmar Robish live on Climate Street. He was giving a shir, and there was a huge, massive explosion in Williamsburg. Reb Shlomo's whole life was shir. His svarim are shir. His svarim are all about shir. It was everything. And he heard the explosion. He closed his Gemara, gave it a kiss, and walked out. 15 minutes later, he walked in. This is Reb Shlomo. Shir was mamish. He once gave a shir of 1 bacha. It was a heavy, heavy snowstorm. So he gave a shir for 1 bacha. They said, Rebbe, how could you give the same shir for 1 bacha? He says, bacha will learn him. He gave the shir for him. And he walks out, comes 15 minutes later, he says, you know what? He says, I want to tell you where I went. You know my wife is home alone. The explosion rocked Williamsburg. I went to make sure that she's okay. She should be nervous. And he came back into the shir. The Baruch didn't need another single message in Jean Weiss. He closed his Gemara and went there. Sagt Shlomo Hyman, in fifth parak of Pirkei Avos, Ma Bein, the Talmidim of Avraham Avinu, the Talmidim of Bilam Arasha. Das sagt Pirkei Avos. What's the chiluk? The Talmidim of Bilam Arasha, the Bilam of Avraham Avinu first. What's the chiluk? If you look at Shlomo Chaim's Svarim, those who have it, in the end of the old first chiluk, today's the end of the second chiluk. They redid it. It says over there, Amoris Ketsaris. I saw it there once. I got excited. It's upgeteicht the mensch. What's the chiluk? He says chiluk. These were the Zara, Bilam's, and Avraham Avinu were the people that were Erlich. They were coming. They were being Megayer. What happened to them? We don't know exactly. But this is what they were. What do you mean, Ma Bain? Ma Bain. He's saying, what's the chiluk between the two of them? The chiluk, massive chiluk. So the Shlomo Eidikavati says. So what the Pirkei Avos says? These Bilam Chaver, Huri Chaver Bali, Gaiva looked down at people. They were bullies. And Avraham Avinu's were nice and edel and fine. They kept a very low presence. They were novicedik. They kept modest and fine people. So that's Ma Bain. The difference is different. Two worlds. What's the difference? Sugar and a malabench. What are you talking about? He says Ma Bain, that they became the way they became. Dr. Shlomo. Avraham Avinu's dire was a dire of Avodah Zarah, was all over the place. And yet these people that followed Avraham Avinu were unbelievable. Talmidei Avraham Avinu. The time of Bilam was Maifsim Beklal Yisrael. Time of Bilam, so many was going on. Kriyas Yamsuf, all the Nisim had Beklal Yisrael, and yet by Avraham Avinu, they became Erlich, whatever they became, Gerim. And by Bilam, when everything was going great in the world, they followed Bilam. What's Pshat, not Bain? He said, the chilik is Midos had to deal with people. These were lousy people. They didn't care to grow in their character. If you don't care to grow in your character, where did the Musa movement begin, Rabbi say? How did the Musa, those who were involved in the Yeshiva world with Musa, where did it start? The big machlekes in Europe, yeah, Musa, not Musa today, I call Maidim, you got to learn. You got to grow, Rabbi the Miller's, all his books. I'm shundik on these Zachen. How did it happen? You know what happened? Where Yisrael was Rav. There was a shoemaker in the town. There's not Baba Mais, there's a shoemaker in the town who became a Gvir Adir. He became a huge, and he made a wedding for his daughter that the whole shtad came to the wedding. Beautiful wedding, and he's walking down with his daughter to the chuppah. And one guy was so mekana him. He was so jealous of him. This came to his faginin. I can't say the word fagin in English, not begrudge. The word fagin now in the Israeli dictionary, but they put in the word fagin as a Hebrew word. It's such an important word. I can't falay that you have money. It's more than that. I can't forget him. So this guy couldn't forget that this shoemaker. All right, opposite of begrudge. You don't begrudge, right? It's a double negative. It's shtickle Terry. Where did you go to school? Very good. All right, bekitza. You don't begrudge, bekitza. But it's not the same word. Forget is an underword. So here's an underword. So this guy runs up to him and he takes a shoe in his hand. Bal Simcha, maybe you can fix my shoe. The guy had a heart attack and he died. The father of the Kala had a heart attack. They had to vazim him in public and he died. Yisrael said if something like this could happen, a mensch could be such a lowlife. The father of the Kala, Avazai Vaiti had a heart attack on the spot and literally, dropped dead. That's Musa. Where are we with our children? We with our children or our grandchildren to train them to be nice. Isn't that what we need, Rabbi say? Ma Bain, Dr. Shlomo, not Bain. What? Of course there's a difference. The difference is these had good midas. These didn't have good midas. When you have good midas, it's not going to work. If you have rotten midas, if you have good midas, you'll become something in life. That's the Ma Bain. But to chep somebody else, Rachmana litzlan, to chep somebody, Rebel Yap Yantzit over the Chafetz Chaim. So Torah. If Torah says, yeah, and the Parshas Balak, Higid l'cha adam atayv zok micha. Did anybody tell you what's good? Wama Hashem darsh micha. What does HaKadosh Baruch Hu want from you? Kiyim, three things. Asais mishpat. That means do the right thing. Avas chesed, to love to do chesed. Avas chesed, love to do chesed. Hatznei aleches melechiecha, to be itch tsanua. It doesn't mean dafke in clothing now. You conduct yourself, not to be loud, not to be grub. Frek to Chafetz Chaim. It doesn't say avas tznius. It doesn't say avas mishpat. It doesn't say avas asais mishpat. It says avas only by chesed. Why? The Chavetz Chaim, we have to train ourselves to become someone who loves to be nice to people, help people. If you don't love to help a Yid, you're not going to be anything. It's a mitzvah to do the right thing. The Hatzalechas is a mitzvah, tznius. But the real mitzvah is Ahavas Chesed. We got to ingratiate in our kids. There's a war. October 7th, almost 2 years now, war. Wherever I went, we just teach kids to feel the tzar of other people. There are many kids in Yeshiva today, by the way, also who haven't touched candy since then. I went to a Menachem Av house, you know the Carmel family. Remember the Carmels in Camp Mori? Carmels. They had one son who was Nifta. The first name began, come on, help me out. No, he was Nifta the one. Nifta, he was Mashgiach in Novominsk, huh? Menashe. No, not Menashe. No. The other one, no. Tzvi Carmel. Yeah, Tzvi Carmel was Nifta. So I remember going to Menachem Av. I want to teach you what it means, the Midas of a prince. He was a murdica person. It's already about 10 years he's not here, but I won't tell you what it means. He used to go, we don't want to find hitchhikers, right? He used to go Dafka, if he was going, he used to live in Lakewood. He left Yeshiva, he'd go Dafka to the spot where people hitch rides to go to Lakewood. If there's a Bachar at night, I'll take him for a ride. Why not? He loved doing, he had Ahavas Chesed. Listen to him, feeling the pain. So by Yeshiva, his brothers told me, Yeshiva, not the Yeshiva, when he was Nifta, that when his mother got sick, she used to love to have a Danish and coffee in the morning. The kids brought her always a Danish. Mrs. Carmel, Rabbi Carmel was a very chashuv yid. I remember him. And his wife, so someone in the house who was there would buy her a Danish with a coffee. And then she got sick, and she couldn't eat the Danish anymore, the coffee. For 4 years, she didn't have a Danish and a coffee. He stopped eating cake that day. Did not touch a piece of cake until his mother was nifteris. By the shiva, he had a piece of cake in the house over there. My mother can't eat a piece of cake. I'm going to have a piece of cake? People in Eretz Yisrael, have a Talmud. Yuri Koenig. He came, I met him last night again. Yuri Koenig is an officer in the war over there. I'm not here, going over here, but telling you to enlist in the army. That's not what I'm doing. I value my life. I'm not telling you, I'm just telling you, listen to what it means. He's a soldier. He's a commander. Wonderful guy, wonderful kid. I got it last night. His brother made a wedding. He came and saw his phone last night. He called me up crying on the phone. He calls me a lot. Crying on the phone. Rabbi, I have to tell you a story. I was ice mensch. They called him into the deepest part of Gaza. He was fighting in Gaza. And there was an explosion. Not where he was, but he ran there to help. The explosion was someone, his soldiers. This you never heard of by Sekher. He himself told me, no, I told himself to Maisa. He himself told me to Maisa. The Kitza, he ran there right away, tried to help, and other guys ran there, and one of the guys who ran there got shot immediately, and the Shama was being out. So he really quick, they brought a helicopter ready to pick him up and get him out of there. The guy who got shot, they brought a helicopter in, and he was with him the whole time. He was one of the fellows from his battalion. He stayed with him and helped pick him up onto the helicopter, and he said to the guy he saw was leaving, he said, say Shema Yisrael now. He still had a little bit of neshama left in him. He said Shema Yisrael. He himself told me the story. He said Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, and he was nifter. He had told him to do it. After he got back from Gaza, he knew the fellow. He wanted to tell his mother. He went to Menachem Av, the young man's mother, and the young man's mother sitting and crying. From a lady sitting and crying. And he says, tell me what he did at the end of his life. Did he at least say Shema Yisrael? Did he get to say Shema Yisrael? And Yuri Koenig says to her, yeah, in my hands, he says. In my hands, he said Shema Yisrael. And he couldn't live with it. But when he heard her say that, his friend died in his hands. And the mother said, tell me one good thing. He was able to tell her, you know why? Because Megalgam was chus. This Yuri Koenig is a magician. So I said, whether I'm getting not fighting or not. But let's think about them for a minute. No. Let's think about them for a minute. Maybe you have 2 pillows, sleep with 1 pillow until then. There's things to do. We have to make our neshamas feel pain of other people. Not just to talk about it. It's easy to talk, Rabbi said. It's easy to walk the walk. But to really focus on it, I'm telling you, I give you hundreds of kids that I know now who haven't touched sugar. One kid, I can't say, Zachan, he kept septic until he was married. And parents, you have to feel the pain, not just the story that happened on October 7th, the kind of story that was this Reb Kalman Krohn, Kanoyer Reb Kalman Krohn. Remember Reb Kalman Krohn? What he was, a giant Remember Kalman Krom Woody? A giant. You know what he did? He's a kanoi. He was a strong guy. Pesach Kron's brother. He went in Lakewood Yeshiva. You know what he did in Lakewood Yeshiva? He got hold of a list of 2,600 soldiers who died. He got their yard sites, who they were, with their names, and he went around Lakewood giving out the name in the yard site, asking young light that every year on the day of the yard site they would learn a Perik Mishnayos and say Kaddish for this particular individual. Kalman Kron, he's mamish. He first state what Zionism is up there it could be. First status. And he died young. But he went around. We can't just talk about the war. How bad the matzah was in Israel. We got to do something, Rabbi say. To help an ayid. We got to make it part of our life, who we are, what we are, etc., etc., etc. It's so important to remember all these sachen, who we are, what we are, where we are. I ain't got a time. Just want to get to pick out a few things now. Let's talk about the other way around. When you're nice, what happens? Victor Miller writes in one of his books, America Think. He writes there, I don't know, I never can ask him if it's a real story, not a real story. It looks to me like it was a real story. The guy was sitting in shul. And the guy walked into the shul, looked like a typical guy who collects money, etc., etc., etc. He said, no one said hello to him. One guy said, Shalom Aleichem Rabbi Yid. Stop me for a minute. I have a chava, Mati Zilba. Mati Zilba, remember him from Yeshiva? Mati Zilba. You remember him? You don't remember him. You know, he came to America for 3 years. He had polio. What's my chava? I went to the back. This is not about myself. I went to the back of the Besmedvish, and I saw a new bach in the Yeshiva. And those were heyday Yeshiva. You couldn't get into the building. It was so packed. Every seat was taken. I gave Shalom Aleichem. He didn't know English. He says Hebrew. I said I knew a little Hebrew because I made it when I went to Israel. After I got married, I decided for 5 weeks I was there. I'm going to speak only Hebrew. I'll learn Hebrew. It helped me out very much because when people came to the yeshiva. And I said, Hebrew, yeah, what are you here for? He says he has polio, one of the last victims of polio. He's a little bit younger than me, my age. Those are not familiar. Polio was a shrekla chamachla. That's the vaccines that all our kids take for polio. Salk vaccine, whatever it was. And he got polio. And they said, there's a doctor, I'm going to name Dr. Milgram in Mount Sinai Hospital, could work with people who are paralyzed from polio. And he's there for surgeries. I said, okay, we're eating Shabbos. In the olden days, best marriage Friday night was people came to the shul, no one left hungry. People took them to their homes in Europe, all over the place. 3 years we became best friends, Rabbi said. He came to my children's weddings. I only made it to one of his, the last one. I can't dare go to Eretz Yisrael without calling him up. That I'm here and I have to come with my wife and sit there and take a full meal over there. It's not shy. Comes to America, like my Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi say. Shalom Aleichem. Dr. Rabbi Miller, you don't know what it means to Shalom Aleichem. This Rabbi Miller says in the Sefer. He says, so this guy walks in there, one guy says, Shalom Aleichem, Shalom. This guy was a tzabruchana guy, for whatever the reason was, but very wealthy. He wasn't a collector. Very wealthy guy. So comes collecting. He says to the guy, I'm collecting for Yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael. They need a lot of money. So this guy is in a good mood. Someone said hello to him. And he hands him a check. He hands him $1,000. He almost passes out. $1,000. He says, come to Shemayim. This guy who said Shalom Aleichem, not the guy get $1,000. Come to Shemayim. He says, you know, there's a Yid, this Yid in America. His name, he doesn't know who he is. It's where it is. You said Shalom Aleichem to him one morning. You know what happened? Because of that, Yeshiva, they still got $1,000. Because he was such a good mood afterwards. So I have a very, very close relative of mine. You don't know him, Rabbi. His name is Richie Fine. That's his name. Richie Fine is an emissary, close relative. I don't think exactly what it is. Very close relative of mine. Richie Fine told me the story himself. 2 stories about Shmuel Kamenetsky now. He should have a Fush Shlema. Shmuel Benita Ethel. He should have a Fush Shlema. It's not Shaykh his Midas or Shmuel's Midas. Those who are Zeicha to know him a little bit. I mean, not heard of flies doesn't tell you anything by him. We once had a big Shabbos with all the Rebbeim in the Yeshiva, and we had a hotel in New Jersey, and I asked for Shmuel to be the guest speaker, and he came. And on the way out, he stopped by every guy by the check-in over there. Every guy, good evening, have a good night. Good evening, have a good night. It's Feinkeit, it's Edelkeit. So so this fellow, who I'm very close to, was 30 years old. Hippies. Remember? You don't know hippies. Who remembers the hippies? Oh, bro, remember the hippies, right? The big beads, the zachem. And he had a chaver, and they saw a lot of people going in and out of. They lived right across the street of Philadelphia Yeshiva, 6063 Drexel Road, right across the street. The kids. So one guy says, "You know what's something going on? Let's go into this." They didn't have a yarmulke. They went looking for 2 yarmulkes. They had no idea what Shabbos was. Nothing. Let's go see what the Orthodox Jews are doing over there. They went into the building with Simchas Torah, and the Bacha are carrying on, of course, Simchas Torah. And one Bacha goes over to this Richie and he says, "Sir, would you like to hold the Torah?" Himself, the person that when I say the story, he himself told me the story. He says, "Me a Torah? I'm allowed to hold the Torah? We chapter fry Yidden. We make fun of you. Chas v'shalom. You want to hold the Torah?" I can't hold the Torah. Yes, you can. The Torah belongs to everybody. So Richie, really? Yeah. Gave him the Torah and he danced with him for 15 minutes. When he walked out of the building, he said to his friend, "Something special just took me over." He's a complete from Yid today. His children are from, his grandchildren are from. He learns himself. He had 0 shaykhs. The Bachas come to Shemayim. You know, there's a family, Richie. We till today don't know who he was. I don't know who he was. Shmuel Kamenetsky doesn't know who he was. So next day, I called Shmuel Kamenetsky. I told him, "Rabbi, I said, you became a Kiruv Yeshiva. You're not really learning. You became a Kiruv Yeshiva." He starts laughing. He says, "Yeah, Rabbi Yaakov, it was made Kiruv Yeshiva." I said, "Yeah, this is the story." He mamish. So he says to me, "Who's the Bacha?" I said, "I have no idea." It happened, Shan Kadmaniyos. It happened 30 years before I told him the story. So I go to the Chicago for a chasana. These stories happen to all of us. We got to remember them. I try to remember them because with the idea of I go to a chasana. Was me Shul Kamenetsky again. Asar Kedusha, my Talmud chasana. The Zayd of the Chassan, who I once met before, but I didn't really know him well, comes over to me and he says, "You know, I write a lot of books. I write in there the history of my family, and I wrote one of them. I learned Philadelphia Yeshiva. Shmuel Kamenetsky woke me up in the morning, telling me my father was sick. He wasn't sick. He was nifted already." So he says, "When did you learn?" He read the book I just come out. "When did you learn Philadelphia Yeshiva? Was it November '65?" I said, "Exactly." I said, "How'd you know?" "I'll tell you why. I was a public school child." But it means Shmuel. I was a public school child. I was a small little player in this story. And we came one day, they brought 30 kids, they made even JEP, one of these organizations that worked with public school kids. We came to Philadelphia Yeshiva, and Reb Shmuel stopped by me. This is the Zayda Erlich, he says to me. He says, "Maybe you want someone that'll study with you, teach you a little bit about Torah?" Why not? He said he had a little bit of a tradition in his family. Why not? And he gave me a Rabbi Yaakov to learn with me. 3 weeks later, Yaakov disappeared. I never saw him again. "I think I just found him," he says to me, because I had to go home suddenly. My father was nifta. I didn't say goodbye to anybody, of course. Yaakov, but he told me when I didn't come back, Shmuel Kamenetsky gave me another chavrus who went with him for years. And he became a frummer person of Shmuel Kamenetsky, the God Ladar, said to this boy, "Maybe you want to know Torah." You know what a schus that is? A schus that this Zayda, I'm sorry, but this Zayda's grandson. But it means being nice, instead of chepping other people. We have a road in front of us, Rabbi say. Chep mentioned, teach our kids to do chesed, teach our grandchildren, Rabbi say. It's such a must to teach them what we are. They can be very aggravating, Rabbi say. Children can be very, very aggravating. They can be very, very difficult. It says in the pasuk in the beginning of Eila Advarim, right? Eila Advarim, pasuk right in the beginning, the greatest Musa Shmuz ever given to anybody was Moshe Rabbeinu Shmuz. Still, this kind of parsha Akev was still busy with it. He's beating up Chai Yisrael, so to say, giving the Musa Dvarim, Beschanan, and Akev. They can be hard kids. So what? This is pasuk test. You ready? I can't carry you guys. Moshe Rabbeinu says to Klal Yisrael, "I can't do it by myself. You're impossible." Next pasuk. Hashem Elokeichem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, hereby eschem, He has multiplied you. I can't handle you. There's so many of you today, like the stars in the heavens. There's so many of you. I just can't handle you. Next pasuk. Hashem Elokeichem, Hashem V'seichem, Yoyser Elechem Gachem, Elef Pa'amim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu shall multiply you 1,000 times more. Like you say, American children, make up your mind. The first two svarms say, "What? I can't handle you. You're impossible." And then the third pasuk says, "Many more of you." You should bench like you said. He's going to make you bench him. Next pasuk. Remember the niggin? Two psukim, impossible. I love you. Shvena is a tata of Klal Yisrael, a mama from Klal Yisrael. He's speaking for Kadosh Baruch Hu. Yeah, we have to give Musa something to a child. And it can be very, very hard. It can be very, very difficult. Very, very, you know what? I want more of you. What does a mother say? When a mother gets upset at her child, what does she say? You're impossible. And 5 minutes she's kissing and hugging you. I tell the parents all the time, even when you give that patch, if you have to give a patch, it doesn't really work today's day. It's different. I'm going to chinuch. It's not a class on chinuch. Maybe next year we'll talk about chinuch. Maybe, but it's not. I'm not sure. But yeah, you could do it with Ava. There's a Yid Rabbi Yisraelson. I don't know his first name. He's a grandson of Rabbi Yaakov. You could do things. Teach kids to be nice. He told me himself the story. His grandfather was an Adam. I'm sorry. His father was an Adam of Rabbi Yaakov. He helped publish the Siddur and whatever. And one time this angel told me he was by Rabbi Yaakov Zayda in his house. And he said something a little bit shalaika hagen, not completely nice. So he got right away, didn't say anything, and then Rabbi Yaakov, okay, 3 months later, Rabbi Yaakov says to him, close him up, I have to go to a wedding in Bnei Brak. Maybe you want to drive me there? Sure, Zayda, Avada. They go all the way from Yerushalayim to Bnei Brak. He goes into the chasana. He didn't stay long, Rabbi Yaakov, as you all know. He didn't stay long. He comes out, gets into the car, and he says, a dank that you drove me here. Thank you very much. Do you remember 3 months ago you said something a little bit? He says, yeah. He says, it wasn't nice. He says, I'm sorry, Zayda. I'm sorry, Zayda. I'm sorry. Then he asked him, Zayda, why did you wait 3 months? You couldn't tell me right away. He says, when you give Musa to a child, you got to be with Ava. Then I'd be able to say I was upset. I went into a chassan. I figured I'll be in a good mood, coming out of a wedding, and I'll tell you nicely. It shouldn't bother you. That's what Rabbi Yosef gesagt. To teach, what did he taught his grandson? What did he teach him? Edelkeit, Feinkeit, Menschlichkeit. That's what he taught him. This is the Yid himself told me the story. That's our job. Not chas v'sham to chepa. And when you have a bully in a crowd, they make fun. Don't let them ever make fun of another child. Who gets made fun of, by the way? Who do you think gets made fun of? The Nebbis. I hate the words. This I'm considered the ugly word. The word Nebbi. Mamis. It's Nevala. It's Nevala Mami to say that. Nivel Pena. But teach them what it means to be nice. When you can be nice to a person, there's so much you could do. There's so much you could do. On the other hand, if you hurt a person, I gave a drush in Baltimore about 3 years ago. I spoke about chinuch and and being nice, etc. You know, the world of chinuch today, I got to tell you, I don't know, Rebbe, it's wonderful today. The Rebbeim today, I don't know about you guys, I went to when I was a kid to Yeshiva. You liked Yeshiva in those days? You liked Yeshiva? We didn't like it, no. I used to have headaches all the time. I used to take a thermometer and put it on the radiator and get it up to 102 and say to my mother, Ma, I don't feel well. We didn't like Yeshiva, okay? We didn't like it. It used to beat us. A lot of Rebbeim Nebuch were Chama Karbanis, they were, it was fair Zachen. And my mother would say, okay, Uncle Gates, my mother, to run to school to teach, Gates and doctor. I'd go to the doctor, Dr. Goodman. Dr. Goodman had a television on Mossy Avenue. And I'd sit there and watch television, and then they would say, Mr. Bender, your turn to go into the doctor. I'd say, no, I'll go later. It's okay. It's all right. No problem at all. That's what it was in those days. That's what it was. We had Dr. Sternberg, we had whatever it was. And so I finished the drasha. And a guy, people wait to come over. They want to comment this, comment that, comment this, comment that. Finish a drasha. And one guy comes over to me and he says, he waits when everybody's out of the room. He says, he wasn't a day less than 75 or 80 years old. I'm telling him, Maisa Shahaya. I didn't ask him his name, I should have. He said to me, I have a problem, he says to me. There was a staff member many years ago who was teaching our class. He didn't say, what kind of teaching class? And last day before Pesach was talking about chametz. He didn't say where the yeshiva was, where he lived. I have no idea. The story is in Baltimore. There's probably no yeshivas in Baltimore. Yeah. And the Rebbe said, just like this chametz, real chametz, chametz, etc. There's also chametz and averis. We got to clean ourselves up. We got to take out all our chametz. And then he says, you know what? In our class, he says, there's a boy there, pointing to me. He says, he's a shtick chametz. He will not be in our class when we come back after Pesach. He didn't explain chametz over Pesach. He didn't explain that. He won't be here next year. What should I do? I can't get out of my system. I said, sir, you're married? Yibach Hashem. Children, 6. All married? Yep. Grandchildren. He was mavazing me in front of my whole class, he says to me. He embarrassed me. I'm thinking, Maisa Shahoya. Of course, I stayed there 10, 15 minutes. I tried to get out of his system. I don't know if I was, it sounded like I was successful. You know why? I told them that plenty of people that make mistakes. They had a fight with their wife. Whatever happened that day, they make it. Well, when you hit a kid, sometimes when you hit a kid, make sure it's for the right reasons. But he was hurting 60 years minimally later. He told me he was a 6th grader. 6th grader is 11 years old. 60 years later, minimally, he's still hurting. Imagine, because I can't get out of my system. Because if you're nice, they can't get out of the system. The Feinkeit is Shlomo Hyman. Shlomo Hyman, that's Feinkeit. Shlomo Hyman was the beauty. I want one more thing. I want to remember it 1 second about Shlomo Hyman. Maybe on the bottom over here. I'm sorry. I scribbled it. I'm sorry. All right, it's a Edelkeit and Feinkeit. Chaim Eiser, by the way, I didn't talk enough about him. Chaim Eiser was the epitome of Edelkeit. He was. It's my mother again. My mother told me that when they went to see him, when they just got married, my father and my mother, they went to see him. He insisted on walking them. That was 1938. He was lived 1940. He had diabetes. He insisted on walking my father and mother all the way to the train 2 blocks away. Young couple. So I said, Ma. I said, we walked with Darchei. He walked with my father, and I walked behind them. I said, what was he talking to your father about? My mother would tell me, and he says, he talked about, he knew my family, he knew my mother's family. He was telling my father what kind of wonderful color he got. That's Reb Chaim Eiser. Yeah. What do? We have opportunities. Pick up a phone and call somebody. I try in Yeshiva very, very hard. They call it nachas calls. More than that. Shmuel Kamenetsky, I had to pay him back a little bit. I go to summer for Shabbos to a camp that has a program called Ruach HaChaim. Wonderful program with Down syndrome kids. So there's a kid there, Hananya Kelma, a wonderful boy, Reb Shmuel's grandson. This year we couldn't do it. Reb Shmuel, last few years before Shmuel became sick, Hananya called him all the time from my porch. He called him up, Zaidi, how are you? And Reb Shmuel was so grateful. Shmuel Kamenetsky needs a phone call from his grandson who has Downs. Of course he does. He's a tata, he's a zayda. It's so easy. We had a chap mitzvahs, everybody say. Chap mitzvahs. And being nice. Let your kids see what you're doing. Let you see what it means. We have to have kibbutz avim because my father's a chrono levracha. I walked in my father's room one day. I remember him being sick. And he was laying with 104 fever. For an adult, that's a lot. And there's a tremendous snowstorm outside. Massive snowstorm. Simcha David, your grandfather. I walk in a story. Massive snowstorm. And he's getting dressed, my father. I said, Daddy, why are you talking? He spoke Yiddish to us, we spoke English to him. He said, why are you getting dressed? He says, because I wrote a letter to the Zayda. He felt he had no mitzvah of kibbutz av in America. My Zayda lived in Israel. So he wrote 4 full blue email letters on the whole letter and on both flaps. And he wrote a letter to my Zayda all the time. We had to write once a week a letter to my Zayda. But he had no problem doing it. You know why? So I said to my father, he said, I have to go mail the letter. I said, Daddy, I'll mail the letter. Down the corner, Marcy and you, there's a mailbox. What do you have to go out for? I have only 1 mitzvah of kibbutz av, he says, so I'm sick a little bit now. I have 1 mitzvah of kibbutz av. We saw that. So maybe we were nice to our parents. Whatever you do at home with your children, that's what they're going to do one day. So I said, please, garnish geholfen. B'shum eifenat. When my grandfather came to Israel, he was busy shining the old used furniture we had in the house. The Zayda kommt. You want kibbutz av aim? Act it out to your own parents if you have them. It only means, everything means how we act, they're going to act. If we're going to chepe, talk negatively, why don't you talk about Shin Hara, I say? Just chepping, staching a little bit. Not going to work. Our job to be B'nai Torah, to act like B'nai Torah. It can be done. It's an ongoing thing. It's not overnight, Rabbi say. It's a continual inculcation of teaching our children to behave. And then you'll be zeichet to wonderful children. You'll be zeichet to your own kids. You have to do that. Left over maybe next year with Hashem. Let me show you one story of Mitzvah Feinkeit. Anybody knew Rav Moshe Feinstein? Anybody knew him? A few of you. Remember Rav Moshe? A story that I never saw over here, I think. Unbelievable story. Gershon Weiss told me the story. You know Rav Moshe? Morty, you saw Rav Moshe come on, the Edelkeit, the Feinkeit. What a shayach. One time he used to come every year in the bungalow colony. My mother was there. I'm sorry, microphone. Every single time, he would come once a Friday He used to stay in Swan Lake somewhere. He would come a Friday and visit a guy who had a stroke victim, Reb Chaim Levovitz, and he would sit in a semicircle. There was a bungalow kind of Altamira. My father was in Altamira in America, in Altamira. They would sit around him, and the kids all brought out their big clunky cameras. Today, can't joke. They had clunky cameras, the big brownies, they were called clunky cameras, and they were taking pictures. And one older man there said, "Kids, enough! What are you doing over there?" You know what Moshe did? He said, "In the kinder." Moshe didn't know they're coming about him, but Moshe, honor my because Adam Adama. He says, "You don't think they?" He went like this. I saw, "Kindler, nem builder," and we all sat. We all went and took builders until we ran out of film. No film was, everybody said. We ran out of film. And that's it, finished. That was Rabbi Yisha. So one time, Gershon Weiss, the Colonel of Rocha, was Manal of Staten Island Yeshiva, told me he lived in a house on 18th Avenue, Borough Park. And that house lived, he himself told me the story. And God, I met a child of his later on. He says, Begitza, there was a lady there who had a disease. Not going into the disease, whatever it was. And she became pregnant. And the doctor said that it's going to hurt the baby very much. Hurt the mother rather very much. It's not good for her. They wanted to abort the child. So they went to his Geshala by Rav and Barak, do it to Rav, Moshe Bik. And Rav Moshe Bik said, it's very shalom. I want you to go to Rav Moshe Feinstein east side. They were very close to each other. And asked him the shalom. They went to a Chassidish couple who couldn't get anybody to pass him in the shalom. Very shalom. So they went to Rav Moshe. Rav Moshe asked for all the information to come back in a few hours. I'm rushing you the story. Come back in a few hours. And they came back in a few hours. And Moshe said, have the baby and you'll be okay. And the baby will be okay. So the Gershon Weiss was in the apartment a year later. A year later, young people came to Rav Moshe. Rav Moshe, I used to go to Rav Moshe all the time. My mother used to send me across the bridge to the east side. And a year later, the phone rings. Somebody on the phone wants to speak to Mrs. Unger. Her name is Unger. Mrs. Unger. She picks up the phone. Doesn't Moshe Feinstein. Mein cheshbon is, height is the baby a year old. Today the baby's a year old. I want to wish you happy birthday. That the Goyin and Tzaddik Adar kept track of the first birthday of this kid. When you're nice, the kids around you see it, they'll be nice. Have a wonderful evening, everybody. Kol tov. Amen.
Shame Irgen Shir Termas is possible. I'd like to give a big Ashakar to our bender for the inspiring Joshua. I'd like to give a big Ashakar to our by Josh Millman and family for the support of tonight's share in honor of our bender. To have the great Swiss sponsoring a share or to join in the Abotzas Torah of Irgen Shir Torah worldwide throughout the year in light of our upcoming annual dinner this Monday, August 18th. Please call 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. Chananya ben Akash Emar Skresh Bochel Zakas is Shol Figure Hibel Torah Mitzvah Shneim Adonai Chofes Aman Sidke Yagdol Torah V'Yadeh. Amen.